Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, humanoids of all descriptions, there's about 500 feet of visibility outside, and that means it's time to come downstairs into the railroad room for this month's model railroad video. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the terminal yard here on my HO scale model railroad, Lakeport Yard. I'm going to talk about the construction techniques I used. I'm going to talk about a couple of products that I used that I'm frankly not happy with, that I'll never use again, and a couple of mistakes that I made along the way where I'm going to have to pull some track out and change things around. So let's get started. So this is the support system for the yard area here on my model railroad. This yard is supported by 2x2s attached with screws and in some places also with glue to 3/4 inch plywood, and in places that 3/4 inch plywood is attached to a stud wall that I constructed here in the basement. Because I'm in the Northeast, as we pan down here, one of the things that you can see is an insulated blanket attached to the foundation wall. That's required here where I live, and so the stud wall simply rests on the floor and is self-supporting. It goes all the way around the room and it's plenty stiff. Like I said, on top of the plywood girders, in this area I use 3/4 inch birch plywood. So birch plywood is in fact pretty expensive, especially in 3/4 inch thickness. The truth is though that I use 3/4 inch birch plywood because my local lumber yards don't carry 1 inch thick plywood. Remember, the foundation for your railroad determines how well it operates. So the thicker and the heavier built this is, the better. I'm a pretty big guy, and it's heavily built enough that I can get up on top of this and not worry about falling through it. So this is a view of the underside of Lakeport Yard proper, where we're on the outside of the operator's pit. Obviously, we can't attach anything out here to the stud wall. So if we pan down, and zoom in, what you'll see is I've attached the legs for the yard directly to the 2x8 that the yard master's platform is on top of. And if I pan up a little bit, you'll also see the yard master's step, because quite frankly, even standing on the platform, the yard is still on the high side. Each one of these legs is 4 feet tall, and as I said in the last section, the basement floor isn't exactly flat. When I was building the house, I told the builder, hey, look, I'm a model railroader. I showed them copies of Model Railroader magazine and Great Model Railroads and said, look, this is the kind of thing I intend to do in the basement, and I need the floor to be truly flat. He said, oh, no problem, we can do that. Well, not exactly. So this allows me to have the yard be truly level in both directions, and if the floor starts to shift for some reason because of water, then I can make adjustments higher up. let's take a look at that. So, on top of the two 4-foot high 2x2s, I have two more 2x2s sandwiched together either by 2x2s or leftover pieces of 3/4 inch plywood from my last railroad. And if we begin to pan and zoom, sighting down the edge of the yard, you'll see that even though the basement floor isn't truly flat, I've been able to keep a really straight edge and keep the yard itself very level. So this is the yard area, or the yard throat area. And what we're looking at here is a Woodland Scenics product, both underneath the two main lines and underneath the yard itself. I've had very good luck over the years with Woodland Scenics products. Whether it's ballast or vegetation, I've always been happy with their products, except for this stuff. This foam product that they sell in rolls in both HO and N scale for mainline tracks and in rectangular pads to go underneath your yard or their larger scenes is, I think, material that's intended for use between your pickup truck bed cap and the bed rails. And frankly, regardless of its sound deadening properties, and it does deaden a lot of sound, it's just too soft. So the rolls don't want to unroll straight and they want to move around. I'm not happy with that. I'm probably going to end up going back and removing the main line and relaying this with cork. As for the yard pad, it's too soft, again, to support Caboose Industries ground throws. So let's get this out of the way. Here's a couple of ground throws from Caboose Industries, and you can probably see as I move this how much the ground throw is moving around. This is, it's so unfortunate. I'm going to have to go back through all of this. I'm going to have to cut out the area immediately around every ground throw. And I'm going to have to replace that with probably a 1 inch by 1 inch masonite square, so that the ground throw will be stable enough to reliably throw the turnout points. So the product was recommended to me by a friend who's a large-scale railroader. He never actually used it himself. He thought it would save me a lot of time because you don't have to split a roll of cork in half. But it's just not been worth it. And so again, I won't use this stuff again. Let's turn the camera to the right and take a look at a bit of an oops that I've made and the S-curves that I'm going to have to eliminate by pulling track up and shifting it. So this area here, the yard throats coming from the west in Lakeport Yard, have turned out to be a big problem for me. I'd like to be able to make the excuse that I laid this out while I was in a haze of pain meds after my back injury. However, the truth is that the pain meds I was on was simply Motrin, and I just screwed this up. That's all there is to it. I blew it. So from here and here, I'm going to have to remove these turnouts, and I'm going to have to remove the number 10s from the main line and switch them around. because this area here and this area here represent a series of tight S-curves. And long wheelbase freight cars, such as 89-foot auto racks and flat cars, simply can't negotiate this area. Moving these 1, 2, 3, 4 turnouts here about 1.5 feet this way will eliminate the S-curve. We have a double crossover with Shinohara number 10s here, and I'll just switch them end to end. And we have a series of crossovers here, a double crossover with number 8s, also Shinohara track. And then the rest of the turnouts are number 6s. But again, I've created S-curves, and I'm going to have to get in here with an X-Acto knife or a rotary tool and cut these out and swap them around. Now that I'm retired, I'll have time to do that. Let's take a look at the rest of the yard. So this is the east end of Lakeport Yard. Again, you can see the double track mainline. On the left of the screen, next to the double track mainline, you can see the 3 arrival departure tracks. And you can see the yard ladder for the 6 classification tracks. I'm pretty happy with the way the east end of the yard works, because it actually works. It doesn't cause derailments. The only problem is still the fact that I used the Woodland Scenics product, the yard pad, which is simply too soft. And again, the solution is I'm going to have to go back with a razor, cut the yard pad out from underneath the Caboose Industries ground throws, and replace that with probably 1 by 1 inch square pieces of masonite. And as we zoom in here, pan over to the right, you can see the back end of the service facility. Again, like I said last time, 4 active tracks inside the locomotive service part of the facility. If we pan over a little farther to the right, we have the car shop directly behind it, because that's the only place there's room for it. And if we come back over this way, you can see the storage track. Initially, this may be caboose storage. I know modern railroads tend to not use cabooses, but it's my railroad. It's very wet here, so the basement floor tends to move a bit. So I'm going to use cabooses, and that'll allow operators to look to the back of their train and see if anything's there, simply by looking to see if the caboose is there. Once I get some more ditching done, maybe things will dry out a bit more, and that will allow me to use that track as a hostler's track for serviced locomotives. Either way, I'm still going to use cabooses. I like the way they look, and again, if you're operating on a model railroad, all you got to do is look at the back of your train and see that the caboose is there. So that's it for this month's model railroad video. Next month, come back and take a look at an incomplete area and the project that I've got going on over there. And it's going to be a big one. So we'll see you next month.